Hello and welcome to the new episode of Fullfunnel B2B Marketing Podcast. This is your host, Andrei Zinkovich, and today we are going to chat about account-based marketing in Scandinavia. My guest is Thorstein Nordby, who is running an ABM agency in Norway. So with Thorstein, we are going to discuss the specifics of marketing and ABM specifically programs in Scandinavia. I would like to dive deeply into the most common mistakes companies are making in this when they are prospecting this region. And as well, we are going to discuss some processes, some case studies, all the things you guys love to hear. Thorsten, welcome and thanks a lot for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I'm always excited to talk about ABM. So happy to be here.
And I always say I like your content on LinkedIn, and not so many people are focusing on practical aspects of account-based marketing. There are
Yeah.
lots of posts that are, let's say, high level, but they don't give you any like good insights, any practical insights about account-based marketing, and that's why I want to chat with you today. But the first thing I want to discuss before diving deeply into ABM is the statement you have in your LinkedIn profile. So you say, we focus on generating more sales opportunities and building your marketing source pipeline. And lots of people are using different buzzwords or marketing slang. Um, so these, let's say, marketing terms might make no sense to other, let's say, people. So what is the marketing source pipeline and how to measure it?
Yeah. So maybe a bit of backstory. When I started my agency in 2014, 2015, we partnered with HubSpot quite early on. And when you are in the HubSpot ecosystem, you learn about the three-step funnel: awareness, consideration, decision. You learn about life cycle stages, leads, marketing qualified leads, sales qualified leads, customers. And I think for many years I had this lead generation mindset where you would get content to get someone's contact information, and you would think that someone downloading your content meant that they had buying intent. But 7 years later, I know that's usually not the case. I think it's easy to get leads. It's easy to look successful if you are measured on marketing qualified leads. And I don't think you need to be a good marketer to get a lot of marketing qualified leads. And my experience was that over time, when we were working with a CMO, at some point a CEO or a CFO would come and say, "Why are we paying this agency like this big sum of money each month? Like, what is the return?" Um, and I've been in reporting meetings. We do monthly, we do quarterly, and we have had customers where we have gotten them from a few thousand visitors to 15, 20,000 visitors in a year, no inbound leads to 150, 200 inbound leads a year. And the CEO or CFO, they usually didn't care about that stuff. And anyone who's been running an agency, they have experienced losing a client. And in addition to that, many many of the clients we work with, they don't always a large part of the organization doesn't always fully believe in marketing from the beginning. uh, so I think I have put a lot of thought into how I could more easily justify the investment in our agency when working with a client. So I think it was probably Chris Walker who used the term marketing sourced revenue. That's at least where I heard it first. I definitely agree on the rationale behind it. I think if you're going to talk about the definition, it's that the contact you generate or you acquire, they're from an organic channel. But then it's also that they convert on the main action on the website. So that will be a demo. It will be request pricing, talk to sales, and I think the rationale is, it's impossible to attribute and report on every campaign and the return on every campaign, but I can know the overall marketing spend, and then I can compare the overall marketing spend to the pipeline growth, and I can see where that pipeline growth has come from. So if the pipeline, the marketing source pipeline is bigger than the marketing investment, then I can see that the client is more excited about the few opportunities that have buy intent compared to the 50, 100 MQLs who downloaded an ebook. So yeah, we focus on sales qualified leads, opportunities, sessions from target accounts, but I think marketing source is kind of the North Star metric. So I don't care about leads, like people registering for a webinar or whatever. As long as we have a lot of good content and a lot of good ads running in front of the right audience, and then at some point they will convert and become a sales qualified lead. So it's quite simple the way we do it.
That's interesting part, because companies, most B2B companies, they have attribution mindset. So they want to track the channel performance. They want to see, and it all comes from the growth obsession, because, okay, this channel generates me like this number of leads at this cost acquisition with this cost of acquisition. So basically I can pour more money into that channel and scale my business immediately, which is not the case for, let's say, most B2B companies that are not selling low ticket SaaS products. But from my point of view, there is one issue with marketing source pipeline, because if, let's say, I believe that it should be a part of general dashboard, because let me give you an example. Lots of people understand the essence of dark funnel, but lots of companies are not talking about the dark funnel. And basically the dark funnel is exactly how most buyers are buying your solution. So let's say you were running IP-based ads or account-based ads, or you were distributing some specific piece of content. So you attracted the attention of target account, and then you have this session. So they come to your website, let's say they check this piece of content, and then they leave you, maybe somebody from your sales reps connected with the buying committee on LinkedIn. I'm not saying pitching, just connected with the buying committee members. And they wanted to start conversation, didn't get replies to their messages, and that's it. But then what might happen in these 2 months, and this is basically a case of our company, Fullfunnel.io. So a person who is an in-house champion is living, let's say, is making own research, asking about our company and other vendors in different B2B marketing communities, and then I know this information after running, let's say, the customer interview. So they were checking some of our case studies, but that were posted as guest posts on Conversion Excel, on Sales Hacker, etc. And then they didn't attend any of our workshops or webinars, etc. But 2 months later, they just filled in the website form. In this case, it could, we could say that it was like marketing source pipeline. It's just a clear, let's say, probably definition of that process. But on the other side, we have a bunch of case studies where my co-founder, Vladimir, who is in charge of, let's say, key account sales at Fullfunnel, he had the activation parts where, let's say, leads, there was some sort of intent, so they were visiting the website or whatever, but then we didn't have any, let's say, touch points with them. So he was doing, the, let's say, there was like a timeline, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months later after that engagement, he reached out, there were no replies, but we were doing, let's say, consistently demand generation on LinkedIn. We didn't see any engagement from these accounts, which means like the buying committee didn't engage with the posts. They didn't, if you'll check LinkedIn stats, you will see the first 10, top 10 companies by views, the content consumption. And we have never seen these companies, in that list. We opened Albacross. We didn't see any visits from this company. But the other day, he reached out with, let's say, some sort of relationship building message, asking like, what are your plans for the next year, etc. And he started the conversation, and which ended up as an opportunity for our company. But what is the funny fact? So if we'll focus only, let's say, on marketing source or sales source pipeline, in this case, we can say that this is a sales source pipeline. But the truth is, again, when we signed the contract, we asked these guys how they were, engage, like what were the triggers that, or what were the criteria that influenced the decision-making process. And they said, so we loved your content on LinkedIn, but they never engaged.
Yeah, that's so funny, right? You have we obsess over engagement on LinkedIn, for example, and then the CEO of some big company, they just like passively consume it, and to connect it to the larger picture, it's in B2B, and let's say if you have a sales cycle, it's 6 months, 12 months, 2 years. It's just impossible to like accurately track every touch point. So you mentioned the dark funnel. I think like that's such a good term for it. And I think more companies need to let go of the having to track everything. I think marketing source pipeline is like a step in the right direction, but yeah, it's definitely not a perfect metric either. But yeah, it's at least closer to revenue than marketing qualified leads and other in my opinion irrelevant metrics.
Yeah, absolutely true. I believe that the end point for every B2B organization should be, let's say, sales pipeline velocity metrics, like sales qualified opportunities, as you mentioned, average contract value, because the truth is, if you'll increase the average contract value, you can scale the revenue.
Yeah.
Win rate, the same. If you'll be able to close win rates, and this is how we can identify the right campaigns for a company. So if you know that your sales are struggling to win more opportunities, so it means that you definitely need to improve nurturing and sales enablement processes.
Yeah.
And that could be the lowest hanging fruit instead of generating more opportunities that won't be closed. So the sales pipeline length as well. All these things can impact the, let's say, the sales pipeline velocity and the revenue. And it doesn't matter because as we just described, there are so many touch points, and there is a dark funnel that we can't track, that we can't measure. If I don't know any, maybe I'm biased, but I don't know any attribution software that will track you the, let's say, the dark funnel.
Yeah, I looked at Visible. We're using HubSpot, and I know there's other solutions out there, but how can they track, let's say if someone is passively engaged consuming your content on LinkedIn, like how could that attribution tool accurately report on the, I guess, contribution to revenue? I just don't see how without some serious privacy issues. But other than that, I don't know. I have yet to see like a attribution tool that does what it actually says it do, which is accurately track all the touch points in the buying journey. So yeah.
Let me ask you a question. So you charge premium prices at Netlist, so the contract range or average contract value is in between 70k euros to 150k. So what are the best ABM plays that work for your company, and how do you land your customers?
Yeah, maybe I can talk about the pricing part of it first. So I think when it comes to the work I do, it does require significant investment, time-wise and money-wise, to make an impact. And I have done I think one of the biggest mistakes is taking on too small clients, because they might have big goals, but if their investment is too low, it will just draw out the time to results, and that just makes unhappy clients. Um, and I started out selling a website to it was like a smoothie bar here in Oslo for 750 euros, and I thought that was a lot of money. And then I pitched a strategy roadmap to a big company in Norway for 3,000 euros, and I thought that was an insane amount of money. And then I saw we lost to a bigger agency who charged like 15K. um, but like today, it's clear for me what results we can bring and the value we can bring. So of course, the pricing is higher, and more confident about what we can deliver. I think before we talk ABM, I think especially for a consulting or agency company, I think it's the first thing is just having the basics in place, which is the positioning. So you have the discipline for market, which is like, okay, this is the thing we do. So we do customer acquisition, and then the market, which is in our case like industry 4.0 companies, which is IoT, industrial automation, and so on. Then I think you need to have a strong perspective. So I think you just talked about attribution, about pipeline, setting metrics closer to revenue. The marketing qualified lead is dead. Having uh, some opinions that might run counter to the status quo. And that is a great way to stand out. Like Basecamp is a great example in the software world. And when it comes to ABM and marketing, I think it's quite simple for a consulting company. When it comes to generating sales opportunities, it's about demonstrating thought leadership. So I'm doing so my process. Maybe I can talk about that a bit later. But it's uh, publishing and getting my perspective out on LinkedIn, on podcast, webinars, articles. So nothing new there. It's not a very complex funnel. It's having the content and then having the scheduling link on the website. I think back to pricing. So most of our clients are in the 70 to 100K range with the services and the software commissions. But we also do value-based pricing, which means that we can tie some of our compensation to certain milestones. So let's say you were my client and you needed to generate 100 sales opportunities and 10 customers, and you had this hardware that cost like $1 million to buy. Then maybe I could tie half of my fee to that milestone. So some clients will are leaning like towards those types of a bit riskier engagements. When it comes to ABM, I think it's quite basic. So since I can only work with a very low number of clients at a time, I think like the max is around 10. I map out the about 20 or so 25 accounts I want to work with. I connect with them on LinkedIn, and then also do a combination of just publishing the thought leader content on LinkedIn, and then at a given time I also do very highly personalized outreach. So personalize it to close to 100% personalization to that account and to that role. I use Vidyard to record a video, so it's more human to human and not a generic text email. I think I essentially do demand generation with using content and then a bit of outreach. I think it's quite simple, to be honest.
Okay, cool. And when you said so, you have let's say demand generation on LinkedIn, you have the outreach. So basically, let's say a mix of creating demand and activating target accounts.
Yeah.
Um, how do you connect with target accounts on LinkedIn? So basically, are you taking the, let's say, proactive part here? So are you actively connecting with the buying committee members of your target accounts and somehow involve them into your content consumption? Or it's like a passive function, but basically when you track the intent and when you see the intent, you just send this personalized outreach.
I would say it's mostly me proactively reaching out. So the way I reach out is actually, so I try to find a CEO, maybe people who are in sales. Sometimes, very often, they don't have a marketing person. So I will connect with them. I will say, "Hi, Andre. We don't know each other. I publish content here on sales and marketing for complex B2B companies. If you're interested, I'm happy to connect." And that's it. It's just like, how can I help you do your job better, right? It's like thinking about what they want, and that works quite well. I think that's like a 70 or 80% acceptance rate, and then I just kind of get them into my stream, and then that's usually the starting point when it comes to acquiring new accounts. And of course, in an agency, it's a lot of word of mouth as well. So I think we get a fair bit of opportunities from there as well. But yeah, I think LinkedIn is definitely the big part. So everything I do, I have like this ABM lens, right? I do demand generation, but I do demand generation towards those 25 accounts, for example. So yeah, I think it's quite straightforward.
Thanks a lot for sharing. And let's now switch to the second part of this conversation, which I want to highlight. Is it's all about Scandinavia. So
Yep.
Scandinavia basically is the one of the most mature, let's say, regions in Europe, aside maybe from Benelux and DACH market. Um, so these regions, I mean, these five countries have the highest purchasing power in entire Europe.
Yep.
But companies outside of that region, they feel they, at least I'm sharing the, let's say, the experience of my clients. They feel that this region is very closed, is very conservative, and it's hard to penetrate into that region. So what I would like to ask you, what are the specifics of marketing to Scandinavian companies, and what are the most common mistakes you are seeing that companies that just start prospecting that market are making?
Yeah. So, um, well, I think to get one thing out of the way, I think Scandinavian companies do many of the major mistakes you can see anywhere in marketing. So, the lead generation mindset, measuring on marketing qualified leads and everything. So I think that's one thing. I think a few things, companies, if you want to sell into Scandinavia, when it comes to language, Scandinavia is not a single country. So that's something companies need to be aware of. Either you market and hire people locally, so you would never market to a Norwegian in Swedish or vice versa. So that's like a very basic thing. But most people are fluent in English, so English is usually fine. And um, I think you would need to probably hire someone locally to do maybe outbound for you. I think that's the quickest way, because of the language and just like the familiarity. Yeah, I think it's definitely hard to sell into Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. So I think that's the main thing. And not properly localizing. If you take an American company and take their messaging and just send it to a localization company, I think that would sound very strange in a Scandinavian language, where we are a bit more not as over the top maybe as Americans. So I think those are like the big ones in
And
my perspective.
if we'll just let's say if I'll talk about the specifics of people, or let's say the some cultural aspects, what are, let's say, the worst things that you can do? Or basically, we all know the marketing best practices or sales best practices. So what things definitely are not working in Scandinavia that work, let's say, on other regions in United States or in other regions of Europe?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I can't say for sure it's that different if it's like something extreme. I think I would say the localization part is actually one of the big ones I've seen, because in many cases software companies will they will set up an office in Norway, in Sweden, in Denmark, and then they'll just like take the same content, the same messaging, and not really tweak it to, let's say you have a lot of statistics, you have that might not be as relevant to the Nordic market. Just have like phrasing and wording that is, a bit over the top and, doesn't look serious, I guess. So I think that is some of the big ones. Other than that, I'm not sure it's that different actually, to be completely honest.
Okay. And are there any differences between regions, let's say Sweden, Denmark, Finland, Norway?
Well, I think when it comes to so if we look at the different countries, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, I think Sweden and Denmark have been on the forefront when it comes to, maybe especially Sweden, when it comes to investment in tech. Just recently, Norway got 2 unicorns in one day, which is quite funny. We haven't had any unicorns. So I think there's a lot of investment going into tech companies in general in Norway. So I think that's like a big upside. It's like a region that in general is, really on the way up. And I think it's not a difference, but it's actually a commonality, is that a lot of the financial records on companies are publicly available in Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. So if you are doing your target account selection, you can actually access revenue numbers, net profit, and everything else in a public database. So I think that's easy to source good target account information. But I think when it comes to the differences, I'm not sure it's like that much of a difference culturally, but I think I would definitely, if I was going to try to get traction early on, if I was a software company selling into Scandinavia, I would definitely hire someone who could do outbound locally, and start there, and hire people locally. I think that would like be the safest way to succeed and get traction early on. But I wouldn't say it's that much of a difference. Like culturally, socially, we're quite the same. I think Scandinavia is like a very like consensus based society. So I think we're quite the same. I think it's the language thing, which is the main thing here that you need to accommodate for.
But you mentioned two things. So one of the most common mistakes, and basically the requisites of successful marketing in Scandinavia, is hiring somebody who will be in charge of sales or outbound and localization. If you are selling to a local market, or if you, let's say, if you are selling hardware or something that should be translated into local language. The question I want to ask you, so you said that a person who will be doing, let's say, outbound locally, this person knows the language, but the language in most cases is not the issue, because in Scandinavia everybody speaks English. I believe you said that there are like the person knows this, let's say, specifics. So what are, let's say, what are the cultural aspects? Maybe you can touch this point, if like what makes Scandinavian people different, or what is the best way to connect? These are the things that I believe lots of people are interested in.
Yeah, so how to connect with, so you want to connect with the decision maker in a Scandinavian company, for example. Yeah, I think well, my impression is that you cannot do like very aggressive outbound. I think that's never worked well
You
for
mean
me.
cold call and this stuff, like
Yeah, I think
emails?
yeah, I think it seems like uh, outbound channels, you could say, are not as saturated as when I look at stats in the US. You have like you for every 20 dials you need for every meeting, wherever you connect, I think you need to do like 20 dials. I don't think that's the case in Scandinavia. That's not my impression. It's less saturated there. um, um, and I think it goes back to having a more toned down messaging compared to the US, for example. Culturally, I'm not sure. It's a bit hard to say, since I'm on the inside. I'm not on the outside, so maybe it's hard for me to compare. Yeah, so I'm not sure if I have anything more to say on that topic.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you mentioned several ideas. So if you were starting with like with a SaaS company marketing to Scandinavia, so you'd hire, let's say, a local person, you do the localization. But one more question I would like to ask you. So if you are launching this company from scratch, or you are leading enterprise SaaS and start marketing to Scandinavia, aside from these two things, let's say you know the specifics of Scandinavian region, so how your go-to-market strategy would look like? So how would you build it?
Yeah, so I think I'll answer this in a bit of a different way. So if I was a CMO of an enterprise SaaS company and I had a lot of authority over the marketing strategy, and that's a big if. And I feel maybe I'm repeating myself a lot in every week, but I think I'm saying the same things. And what I would want to do, I think it's to my first priority would be to eliminate stupid stuff. I think it will be quite easy to stand out in Scandinavia, because there's so many companies who are doing the 2010 inbound marketing playbook. So I think my first priority would be, ungate a lot of content, remove bidding on too broad of a keywords on Google Ads. I would stop measuring success on marketing qualified leads and move my metrics closer to revenue and pipeline. I would, have the salespeople do more personalization when they're doing outbound. I would just stop publishing, company-centric stuff on LinkedIn, having lead gen forms on Facebook and LinkedIn, and just like free up budget and resources to do better things. I think these are the things I just see again and again, which I tell companies to stop doing, even big venture funded SaaS companies.
Let me ask you a quick question here. So
Yep.
just to follow up this, I completely agree with you. And one thing that makes me really smiling is when
Yeah.
companies are talking about marketing qualified leads, because
Yep.
the truth is, if you are making a list of accounts, that list should be approved by sales and aligned
Yeah.
with sales. So this all these accounts are marketing qualified by default. They should
Yeah. That's a good point. I think I think there's like no alignment at all on I think, like, you read about marketing or sales and marketing alignment, and it's um generating X amount of marketing qualified leads to generate 25 sales qualified leads. You have this made up calculation that never works in reality. But yeah, like, just getting like, I think I really like your phrasing about activation, warm up and activation campaigns. So, yeah, like, you just simply you select your ICP, your target accounts, and then you agree on the warm up campaigns and the activation campaigns. Yeah, like, do that instead. But yeah, they are marketing qualified leads by default. Yeah, so
indeed.
it's very funny. But yeah.
And one more follow-up question. So you said that you'll be doing, let's say, you'll put away that obsolete inbound playbook. You'll move away the gated content, etc.
Yep.
Move, let's say, analytics, switch analytics from lead generation to revenue. And my question is, how do you usually present these ideas to customers? I believe they still have some, let's say, concerns or objections against this. So how do you persuade them that this makes sense?
I think there's a couple of ways to do it. So if they are, in many cases, they are on HubSpot, for example, so you can do some reporting. You can see, okay, you can bring up numbers that says, okay, this is the number of marketing qualified leads, and this is the conversion to. You can have like a very simple funnel visualization that shows conversion rates, and then you will almost always see like a very low conversion from marketing qualified lead to sales qualified lead and opportunity and customer. So that's like the data part of it. That's quite easy to do. And then I think also you can ask stakeholders about, like, do you download ebooks? Do you partake in this behavior that you like? Do you like to be marketed in this way, to make it a bit personal? I think, and that gets people to think. And it's funny, right? How many companies still resist having a more bias-centric approach to marketing. And then you ask them, like, okay, how do you buy software, whatever, and I Google, I go on LinkedIn, and sometimes they don't see the connection about their own behavior and the disconnect between how they market and sell their own thing. So I think that's funny to kind of ask them those questions and make them think about, rethink how they should do things.
I have one more thing that I completely agree, because I'm doing the same. So I'm describing the same things to them. But one more thing that I noticed that works really well, especially with companies that have this outbound mindset. They think about automation. They think that automation will solve all the challenges they have in marketing and sales. So what I usually do, in most cases, they use software like Expandy, for LinkedIn outreach. So I open Expandy. I ask to get access to their profiles, and then I try to I'm scrolling down, and I'm seeing all the inbox messages, and I am seeing let's say the spammy messages that are coming towards their way. And it could be something like somebody connecting with you saying, "Hi, Andre, I saw you on a B2B marketing. Let's connect." Some like neutral, I'm not, let's say, evaluating the quality of that outreach, but let's say, so you just accept that connection request, and then immediately pitch comes. And what is interesting, they never reply back. And then I'm just making a bunch of these screenshots or recording the Loom video, describing this. And I'm asking, guys, but why you're not replying back? Why you're not jumping into the calls?
Yeah.
And what makes, and now I'm opening their outreach and say, what makes your outreach different from these messages?
Yeah.
And it's just an eye opener for many salespeople, for executives as well,
Yeah, when we're talking about LinkedIn, like if I give like super basic LinkedIn advice and clients and prospects tell, oh, I can't get LinkedIn to work. It's like, okay, don't put a link in, and then focus on what your audience wants, and then they go from like no engagement to 25, 30 likes. So it's like just switching from being company centric, product centric to the buyer. You just see a big difference. So I think I've written about that a lot. Being buyer centric in general is pretty much the key to succeeding today. So yeah, but it's funny to that companies have that disconnect between their own behavior and the way they actually like to be marketed to themselves.
And the last part that I would like to touch is the case studies. I know that we all operate with NDAs, but anyhow, can you share any great case studies that you are proud of? Of course, you can leave aside the confidential details, but probably the program orchestration, the nitty-gritty details about the setup. So that could be really interesting if you can highlight it.
Yeah, I can kind of frame it through the process we have. So the first step we have is like we do what we call a diagnostic. So then we define the ICP, ideal customer profile, find the target account list, map the stakeholders, figure out the positioning, the jobs to be done, and then map out the content for the buying committee. I think you call it the map of informational needs, which is I think a good way to phrase it. So what information does the buying committee need to consume, or what do they need to know before they are ready to make a purchasing decision? And then of course goals. So okay, we can work back from revenue. What's the number of customers, the number of opportunities, sales qualified leads we need to be at a certain time in the future. So that kind of lets me understand the gap we need to or like the A to B. And then after 3-4 weeks with that process, we will go into more of a technical, building like a good technical foundation. In our case, that means setting up HubSpot and migrating data into the CRM, setting up analytics and reporting, so that's ready to go. That you have channels like Google Ads to capture existing demand, so capturing those who are in the 1% that's actively buying, and then we trying to fill the funnel, I guess. So go into more of an implementation phase where it's essentially about creating the content and distributing it. So usually we have clients who, if we look at their organization, they have like this 20-1, 10-1 ratio between sales and marketing. So their budget in marketing is like quite modest. So we have to kind of do a lot with a little. So what I try to find is like one content pillar that the client can sustain. So ideally, I would like to see that is like a video podcast like we're doing right now, but it can be just like doing voice memos or anything to get. So I try to create outlines for each topic, and then maybe you will record either a podcast based on that outline, or just do a voice memo based on that outline, and then you can repurpose that into other pieces of content. So that can become a podcast, that can become an article, that can become LinkedIn posts, LinkedIn videos, short form videos on YouTube, and then distribute that content. Now it's obviously LinkedIn organic, your personal profile, which is the most effective. And now we're focusing really on paid distribution, Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads. So that's like the process we go through.
Okay, cool. Thanks a lot for sharing. So that was like That was really interesting to discuss all this, let's say, things related to shifting from lead generation to client-centric approach. The ABM approach as well, some insights about the Scandinavian market. And for you guys who are interested in marketing to Scandinavian companies, in the podcast description, you'll find the links to Thorstein's website and his LinkedIn profile, so I'll be able to connect. And yeah, thanks a lot for joining me. That was like a brilliant episode.
Yeah, it was fun talking to you, and I hope your audience got a lot of value from it.
Talk to you soon, guys. Cheers.